So we've got with us tonight 3 accredited specialists who were successful last time these programs were run. Craig Nicol, in the check shirt, is a partner at Small Myers Hughes, and he's an accredited specialist in family law, and he's a co-editor of the Family Law Book. Stephen Gibson, at the other end of the table, is a director at McCarthy Jury Lawyers, and he's an accredited specialist in property law. And Carla Parsons is the director of Parsons Law and is an accredited specialist in succession law. So thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm going to start the ball rolling by asking a few questions, and I'm hoping the audience might have some questions as well. I might start with you, Craig, since you're on this end of the table.
Sure.
Why did you choose to become an accredited specialist?
I suppose when I first got into law, it was always that career goal, in that when we used to have articles, it was always articles, getting admitted, specialist accreditation, and then partnership. So it was career goal for me, and I suppose the other element was a challenge in terms of you being a specialist. I suppose it's not across the board, but with me at least, specialising in a particular field, I thought it was a challenge, or earning your stripes.
That's fantastic. Carla, what about you?
I think for me, I had a goal, I guess, to practice at the top of my area of law, and so I felt that the Specialist Accreditation Program would help push me to that point, and I certainly feel that it did achieve that outcome.
Good.
Not that I'm at the top, but...
And Stephen?
I can't add too much to what these guys have already said. To me, it was just the logical progression of my career, and I'd sort of climbed every other mountain along the way, and this was the next one for me. So.
Can I just ask, were each of you at the 5-year, past the 5-year limit when you applied? Yes. Yeah.
I was a bit short. I had to apply for the dispensation.
Okay.
Wrote as persuasive letter as I've ever written in my career, and seemed to have done the trick.
Maybe you'll need to see a copy of Stephen's letter, just in case. In terms of preparation, I'm speaking very much as an outsider here, and you've all done it and been successful pretty recently. Any thoughts on the preparation or planning that you did? Time you put aside?
I'll go first. I'll confess I didn't get through the first time. So as daunting as it was in terms of going again, I must have started in something like August the year before, in the year that I didn't get through. Just writing notes, spending any time that you do have, just rewriting notes and coming up to snuff in terms of areas where you're not confident. And then the second time round, as much as I needed to update my notes, it was that much easier. So
yeah.
To try and consolidate all of that, I suppose I started in August the year before.
Okay, wow. That sounds good. Carla?
I would have started a long time before, I guess, at least a year. I put a lot of time and effort in preparing, particularly the notes, getting comprehensive notes together, not just cases, but articles, precedents, and as Craig mentioned, focused as well on the areas that weren't my strengths. So I put a lot of time into that.
I just took the information booklet from the information evening and used it as a checklist. I mean, it was long. It was like 24 pages of bullet points on the content that you needed to be conversant in. I just worked through that, and I mean, most of it you know as a practitioner, you give these advices day in, day out. Whether or not you can answer them to an examination level like we used to have to do at universities, another thing. So it was a matter of working through the list and making sure I could do that for each of those bullet points. I pretty much I came to this information event the year I did it. I got up the next morning and went to the office early and started studying then, and I would have put probably 2 hours in maybe 3 times a week, and then every Sunday essentially, or like all day, every Sunday from this event through to the examination in
July time.
Oh, the take-home exam I think was in June or something.
May, June, yeah. Okay, so it is, what I'm hearing is there is preparation involved, but it's about being conscious of your own expertise and perhaps areas you're not so comfortable in, and recognising those based on the material in the assessment criteria. Does that sound like a fair summary, do you think?
Yeah, for property law, the fields are particularly broad. I can't even remember them off the top of my head, but I think it's broken down into 4 particular fields of practice, and I think the reality of it is very few of us actually practice to a high standard across all 4 of those disciplines. I mean, one of them, one of the disciplines for the property law accreditation was mortgages and securities. And I mean, truth be told, I might have written 2 or 3 mortgages in my career, whereas the other 3 fields were my daily bread and butter. So that required a particular exertion to bring myself up to scratch on.
So you think becoming familiar with that material was really really important for you?
Definitely.
And just work in groups. I know I didn't.
I did. I joined a study group, which I think helped as well. So we all independently prepared, so had our own separate notes. We didn't collaborate on our notes. I think it's important in those settings that you're familiar with everything yourself, because sometimes, particularly the exam, you need to put your fingers on things very quickly and know where to find things. So relying on someone else's notes, I wouldn't find particularly useful. But for the study group, we concentrated on past assessments. So we'd pick particular questions from different assessments, and then each have time to think about quite quickly what we thought out, the main points were, and then talk that through. And in the study group, people had different areas of strengths, and so we were able to pick questions that we didn't think were our strong points, and then have other people help and prepare in that way as well.
And did you spend much time with your study group, Carl?
It gets quite intense, obviously, as time goes on, with work pressure and study pressure, and you're trying to get through all your readings. But I think we probably caught up maybe 4 or 5 times for an hour and a half session. We were not just, most of the time it was a teleconference call. So everyone had the paper in front of them and we're talking on the phone on a conference call.
Great. Okay, and Stephen and Craig, you didn't use the study groups? No.
I think the people who sat at my year, only one other person opted into the study group, and she was practicing at Toowoomba.
Oh, okay.
It didn't work out.
Bit hard to get it going. And I know each of you became accredited, so you obviously did many things very well. But can I ask what you might choose to do differently if you've told us what you did differently the second time, which was had your notes already and were able to refine them.
The first time round I was fine. I just didn't get through the oral examination. So in terms of what I would do again, it was more hands-on experience in that the oral examination for family law is a mock interview. And I think I fell into the trap of thinking, well, how hard can an interview be? You're sort of meeting clients day in, day out. And I sort of, because it's the same, but it's so much different in the sense of everything is condensed into that one time frame. So it was a matter of condensing your interview structure as well. And I think that's what I struggled with the first time.
Okay. So you think the experience of having done it on top of your knowledge
I got
was
my driver's license the second time round too.
Fair enough. Carla?
One thing that I would share just from a personal perspective is the way it ran last time was our exam came after the oral assessment, so the next day, and before the exam everyone sort of gathered round and started talking about it. And for me, I would love to not partake in those sorts of discussions because it threw me before the exam. I got into a bit of a mindset that, well, I didn't hear that and that didn't happen for me, so maybe I've missed something. And I think probably the first half of the exam got to battle like evil Carla, who was convinced that everything was already over before I'd finished the exam. So I would probably just not participate in that sort of discussion again and keep focused and wait till it's all over.
Stephen?
I very nearly didn't pass the written exam, the old-fashioned classroom exam. I made the same mistakes I made at university.
Stayed out late the night before.
Yeah, right. No, just, you get bogged down in a question you struggle with, and instead of cutting your losses and moving on, I overcommitted to that, and then sort of didn't complete the balance of the questions. And I mean, we all know that, and I'm sitting there telling myself, you've got to cut and run. But
So good Stephen
old
was
habits
in there.
die hard. So just basic examination drill. Just, you know what you got to do. Just make the sacrifice and do it.
And I think that's something that certainly I'd like to talk to people about at the assessment briefing evenings is good old technique. Because that timing and all of that is really important, and being able to have the confidence just to execute your plan, really, I think is very important. Now, any tips apart from not staying out late and not forgetting about your exam technique? Stephen?
Any tips? The advice, so we've got a couple of other solicitors in my firm who I'm pressuring into doing it. The guidance I've given them is just work through the list. You know it. It'll be a matter of honing that knowledge. They're going to give you a very lengthy but detailed list. Just go through it, and you know what you don't know. So I think just flag the ones you don't know and learn them. I think if you do that, don't underestimate the amount of time you have to invest in it. I mean, this is going to be an investment. It's going to be an imposition on your life for the next, what are we talking, 4 months or something. Set that side of time and be realistic as to whether or not you can afford the time. I mean, it's never going to be a good time, but can you make that sacrifice? And I think the people who do have the time and just tick off those items on the list will pass.
Carla?
Much the same as Stephen. I think you need to be willing to sacrifice and put the time into prepare. I felt like before we got to the final assessments, if only I had one more week, even though I'd put so much time in. I'm sure everyone, you feel like that all the time, but make the commitment and set aside, as Stephen said, what he did, setting aside time every week and just pushing through to stay on top of it. And I found putting effort into consolidating notes in a logical order that made sense to me, with precedents and all sorts of things in there, was a really useful tool that I benefit from post the assessment process, of having all that organised and there for me.
It's a related point, but just in terms of structuring your time, I found a challenge. Strangely enough, I needed something silly like 2 to 3 days just to deal with the word limit. Because it's not like a letter in terms of, there's no word limit when you're sending a letter to the client or whatever. You can bang on for as long as you want. But I found that really difficult in terms of, what you want to say. You want to convince the reader that you know what you're talking about. You've got to keep it simple because it's in family law, at least it's a letter to the client. But at the same time, you're just butting your head against that wall of word limit all the time. And as I said, I needed to budget something like 2 to 3 days just to deal with the word count. So.
Wow, okay. And so that's back to that technique and being aware of what you're being asked about and being able to manage that. Thank you for that. Now, it sounds like you all put a huge amount of work in and planned what you did, and you were ultimately successful. Do you think you've built your professional confidence out of that, or have there been other sort of benefits that perhaps don't all reside in the logo?
I mean, the process itself is, it certainly builds your confidence and gives you that feeling that you thoroughly do understand the area of law, and that you're on top of what's happening in that area of law, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you think you know everything going into it, you will know everything once you do it.
It's quite an investment.
Yeah. You'll sit down and you won't, as I said, you do this all day, every day, and you think, yes, I know retail shop leasing. And you sit down and you work through the study for the accreditation. It's like, wow, there's so much more depth to my daily craft than I previously, appreciated. So.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, even the year that I didn't get through, I still felt at the end of it all that, it was worth it in the sense of coming up to snuff on so much.
That's great. Yep. So, and I think we do hear that a lot, once people have got through that really busy, challenging time that we've talked about, people do find that they've got a lot out of it, whether or not they were successful. Have you had, I wanted to ask as well, have any of you had any opportunities present themselves, professional opportunities or other opportunities arising out of your accreditation, do you think?
Within 2 months I was doing the practice management course and yeah.
Wow, great.
Yeah, I've since started my own firm, and I'm teaching at Bond University and teaching for another university, so I would probably put that down to both the confidence from the accreditation program plus the having the accreditation.
It hasn't revolutionised my practice. I was had more work than I could do in any given day of the week before I did it. In fact, more work than I can do in any given day of the week now. It probably, I'd say I have one additional work out of it from having the accreditation. Clients who may have been equivocating between me or another practitioner, I believe I've probably pulled across the line with the additional credential, particularly given my relative, lack of experience. That would be the extent of it.
Okay, now, closing thoughts. What would you say to the people in the room, the people listening on the phone, the people who are going to see the recording of this event about the process and the exercise of becoming accredited and then being accredited?
Do
Great.
But, yeah,
Just do it?
Pass or fail. It is a worthwhile investment in your career. You will be a better lawyer because of it, I believe. Pass or fail, you will learn so much. It's a worthwhile investment. If you're a career-minded person with a future in the legal profession, I think it's something we should all be doing.
Carla?
Don't underestimate any part of it. Each of the assessments, as Craig mentioned before, the oral assessment, assuming that it's going to be easy because that's what you see clients every day of the week. I think as well the time, don't underestimate, it's going to take a lot of time and commitment to get through the process, and also the pressure you feel. I still feel the pressure sitting here, even though I was successful. So, be kind to yourself and appreciate it. It's going to be quite full on, but it's certainly worth it, as Stephen said, whatever the outcome is.
Craig?
And not that I want to harp on it or anything, but I mean, even if you don't get through, I mean, I went from coming a cropper in an interview and kicking the cat and so forth, to the following year where I achieved the highest achiever award. So, and I'm certain that I wouldn't have got that award if it wasn't for having gone through the first time. So.
That's great. Look, thank you. Anyone in the room like to ask any questions or have anything you'd like to add or hear from? Hello. Oh, Jay's got the microphone. Just a moment.
You've spoken about the time that you've required in terms of preparation, but around the actual times of the assessment, that is when, for example, in the family law matter, when you had the mock file or the written examination or the client interviews, did you take time off work during that period or did you work through?
I personally didn't know. I think for the mock file, there were 3 weekends, so they did it over 3 weeks, but you had 3 weekends within that 3-week block, and I think on the last weekend it was actually a public holiday. I don't know if, is it still a public holiday in June? Moving all the time.
What year is it?
But yeah, so it was basically planning your weekends so that you wanted to be at X stage on that weekend, and at least in that year, you knew that when you got to the long weekend, that was it in the sense of, I think that last weekend, I don't think I saw much daylight. But yeah, it was just a matter of planning. But no, I personally didn't take time off.
I took some time off just before the weekend when all the assessment happened, so I think it was only maybe the Friday before, just to prepare. And with the take-home file, I think there was maybe like a long weekend and then another day before it was due, so I took that last day just to have that up my sleeve as well, just in case, and I used every minute of it.
I didn't take any time off, but I think I lost half a day of billable time proofreading the take-home exam the morning it was due.
How'd you go with did you have a word limit?
Well, that was the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Hello, hi. Oh, hang on, Jay's going to join you.
Have any of you thought of, you did the accreditation, special accreditation 1 year, and then the following year doing a specialist accreditation in another area, say family law and succession law?
That got put to me after having gone through it in alternate years, so having done it twice. I had to be convinced to do the practice management course.
You
The
couldn't
answer's
come
no.
back, could you?
It'd be pretty daunting going through 1 year and then having to turn around the next year and do it again.
And can I say as well that with the substantial involvement requirement going up to 50%, it's going to make it, in practical terms, really, really difficult to get, certainly to get probably accepted into the second program, because you'll need to be able to convince the committee that you are at 50% when you've just been at 50% doing something else. So that's a practical challenge that could emerge, I think. Anyone else? Thanks, Jay. No? In that case, we're going to break into program areas now. Family law potential candidates can stay in here and your committee members will be with you. The succession program people are next door in Auditorium 1, and the property people are around the corner. Can I thank the panellists for their time tonight?